Hello and welcome to Open Dialogue. Meet me at the movies right here. I'm Noel T. Manning II. Really happy to have Roddenberry joining us today to talk about many things Star Trek, and especially as it relates to a guy that he knew, his father, Gene Roddenberry, the legendary Gene Roddenberry, would have been 100 years old this year in August. I think August 19th. Is that
August 19th? That is correct.
And I really appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you always are, but especially now as you're thinking and talking and just being so involved in this centennial celebration of your father. So thanks, Rod. Thanks for being here.
Oh, no, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Well, man, I have grown up a fan of Star Trek. When I was a kid, this was before cable, and I remember sitting in front of a little black and white TV that was about 13 inches. And we got 3 channels, 3 networks. And then if we were lucky, we could get the UHF and get public broadcasting.
Right.
And there were a handful.
Good rabbit ears, right?
Yes, exactly. We didn't have the antenna on the roof. We had the rabbit ears with some tinfoil wrapped around them. But there were probably about 5 TV shows that I can name off the bat that I engaged in on a regular basis. And Star Trek was one of those. And I never really thought a lot about it at that time, about here we are, 5 decades later, the impact that it could have. It was just a show that allowed me to escape and to go to other worlds. And I loved that as a kid, and still do, even as an adult. As you think back in celebration of your father, what are the first Star Trek memories for you? Because from what I've read, you actually decided to come a little later into fully embracing it. So what are those first memories for you?
Yeah, I'm somewhat embarrassed to say that as a young kid, I was very self-involved. I was privileged, and I watched what kids watch on TV, at least kids that are not as intellectually advanced. Knight Rider, Starsky and Hutch, Adam 12, those sorts of things. It did take me a while to really understand Star Trek, and sadly, almost to my father's passing is when I really started to grasp it. But the memories that I have most, or the best memories I have, there was a time when I must have been, who knows, 4, 5, 6, 7, something like that. And in my father's home office, in his bathroom, he had a 8mm projector, a very small, thin projector, not a 35, that's for sure. And it's the one he would take to conventions, and he would show the blooper reel. But at the time, I didn't know, but he had a little white piece of cardboard about this big, and he would show me the blooper reel. And I thought it was great because it was these guys running into doors and falling downstairs and all this sort of stuff. I had no concept of what Star Trek really was at that point. But in terms of father, son, and great memories, that is certainly one of my first, and frankly, that might be one of my first times really ever watching Star Trek. Taking that a step further, my next memory where I actually got Star Trek, and I was quite a bit older, was when I first saw Devil in the Dark. That is the original series episode with the Horda, the rock monster. And I had seen Star Trek before that, but I would say I didn't really get it. That was the episode where, and spoiler alerts 55 years later, but the rock monster is killing humans on this planet. Humans are on this planet and they're mining these crystals for whatever reason. And the Enterprise is called in to save the day. And of course, I think maybe they start by shooting it first because it's attacking people. Spock realizes that it's a sentient being and that we should communicate with this sentient being and see what it wants, which is a brilliant idea. And of course, we find out that it is a mother protecting its young, and the crystals that we're mining are its eggs, and it's doing what any mother would do. And that was the first time my whole perspective of what television could do just threw me for a loop.
Right.
Because I never had a feeling like that where I said, oh my God, we're the bad guys. We're the devils in the dark. And that is like my personal defining moment as to this is Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I've used that sort of as my reference ever since. And I feel like if Star Trek is not getting people to consider a different point of view, if it's not getting people to think, and I agree, it needs to be entertaining, there needs to be action, there needs to be, you've got to be engaged with character, absolutely. But if it misses the mark on getting someone to think of something a different way, then it's not doing its true job. And I'm very myopic and narrow-minded when it comes to Star Trek. It has to have that, and that's
Yeah.
my take on it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it is a series that, looking back 50 plus years later, and even in what we're seeing, the new installments of this legacy that's living and breathing even today,
Mhm.
it is a thinking person show. Sure, there's the entertainment, sure, there's the engaging characters, as you mentioned, and then there's stories that bring you in, and crisis and conflict.
Mhm.
But there are so many episodes, most episodes, I would say, make you think about something and ask questions. And
Yeah.
and you don't get that with all TV. You don't get that with all stories. Do you think that is what has allowed this to endure for so long?
100%. 100%. You know, I actually grew up, and I told you I was a late bloomer when it came to Star Trek, so I loved Star Wars. And Star Wars was a lot of fun. I mean, that was good guy, bad guy action, lightsabers, the Force, the whole thing. That was pure, sheer, great writing, entertainment, great story. Uh, but it is different than Star Trek. And you know, I'm not going to say better or worse. They can both coexist just fine. But Star Trek, you know, it had something to say in the 60s. You know, it talked about its backbone philosophy of IDIC, infinite diversity from infinite combinations. And that's the true appreciation of all things different in form and in idea. Captain Kirk and the crew were not flying around the galaxy looking for strange looking aliens. They were looking for aliens that looked at the universe in a different way, because they knew that's how you intellectually grow and evolve as a species. And that is such an appropriate thing for the 60s. And sadly, it's incredibly appropriate today. We need to not appreciate, we need to thirst and crave the diversity between us. That doesn't mean we have to accept it. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it. That means we should hear it and not be afraid, because every time we hear something different from a different perspective, our own perspective grows and evolves and shifts just a little bit. And that's the slow process of becoming a more intelligent species.
Absolutely, yeah. In our world today, we are happy inside our bubble, whatever that bubble
Yeah.
may choose to be, and we're in. We think about our own echo chambers, but Star Trek at its basis was about exploring beyond self,
Yep.
beyond the ideas that we have here, and looking at what is out there, and it does continue to do that. As you
And don't get me wrong, by the way, I'm sitting here on my soapbox, you know, saying this stuff to you. It's an incredible challenge to do this, and I often do not. But the idea is every little bit helps. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, there are so many. We talked about the enduring ideas for Star Trek throughout the years, but there are also enduring characters and those that speak to each of us in different ways. Are there characters that you have felt the most connected to, maybe early on, and maybe characters now that you feel more connected to now that you are at this point in your life?
You know, I'm so glad you said that, because I often make the reference. I did a documentary called Trek Nation, which was a son searching to understand his father.
Yeah.
And I made the correlation between my father as a young man in the late 60s as more of a Captain Kirk, a little bit more swashbuckling ladies man kind of thing, to Captain Picard, you know, 25 years later, who was more diplomacy and more intellectual. And I can't say I make the same connection. I can tell you two things. I can tell you Picard is probably one of my favorite captains, if not my favorite captain. And I understand for television, his diplomacy didn't always speak to people because they wanted a fist fight. But I would rather be on his ship. And it's not just that. He's the true example of a leader. I do not believe in leaders who lead with an iron fist, who say, do this because I say to do this, or else you will be punished. I believe in leaders that bring in the people around them that are incredibly talented in those areas. And then that captain looks to each one of them for advice, for their perspective on it, and then makes an informed decision. That is true leadership. A captain, a leader does not know anything, but they do know what they don't know. And they do know that they need to seek the counsel of people who are smarter, more intelligent, wiser in those areas than that person is. So I truly love the idea of Picard. And then I'll just have to say, Data and all the non-human characters throughout most of the shows are usually my favorite because it's always the aliens that show us our humanity.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. For me, there is a little bit of Spock and a little bit of Bones kind of at battle in me, because
Yeah.
there are times that I want to use my logic, but my hot head and my impulsiveness sometimes gets in the way. So
Every human, right? Every human,
absolutely.
we react every time. Listen, I see something on the news and I see something out there and I say, what an idiot. But then I've got to step back and actually, probably even have a little bit of empathy and say,
Right.
you know what, I've done that. I've
Yes.
been just as dumb. Maybe this person's just having a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Just sometimes you look in the mirror and you realize, wait a minute, that's me. I'm that idiot.
and that's important. And then we have to forgive ourselves because
Yes.
it's hard to live with the burden of knowing that you did something disrespectful or wrong or
Right.
made a mistake or you hurt someone. Recognize it, come to terms with it, make amends if you need to,
Yeah.
but then you have to move on and become hopefully a better person.
Yeah. If you could tell more stories through Star Trek, what are those stories that you think you would like to tell, or what are the stories you feel like should be told?
That is, I mean, that is great. Star Trek does a very good job of it already. I just think sort of the key thing, I'm not getting political or anything. I guess I'm getting more social. I just said it. I mean, empathy. Empathy is
Mm,
something that we need. We've always needed. We need it in the 60s. We need today. Hopefully we'll need it less and less as we become more empathetic. But stories that, of course, are entertaining, engaging, all of that, but still teach us to try to understand it from the other person's point of view.
yeah.
Again, you don't have to agree with it,
Right.
but at least you're less reactionary, you're less combative, there's less fights, and you can see them for who they are, and you can give them forgiveness and counsel and guidance rather than hostility and insulting. And that if we could get our world to do more of that today, we would have a far better future, far
Yeah.
better. And again, I can say this stuff, I can't always do it.
Well, I think we are always much better talkers than we are active listeners. And
Yeah.
that active listening is something that becomes, it can become difficult. Actually, it's very difficult unless we are aware of it. And
Yeah.
I think at the core, when you look at Star Trek, there is so much of active listening if we take the time to listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to give you a chance to talk about Roddenberry.com and talking
Sure.
about more than entertainment.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than entertainment that you're involved in. There's research, there's philanthropy, other things you
Yes.
want to share relating to that.
Well, yeah, let me jump right in though with celebrating my father's centennial. It was it's different. It's different, more difficult with COVID, of course. So we're trying to do a lot of digital and more online sorts of things right now. We do have a number of campaigns right now. We've got the Think Trek campaign, which the idea there is in any of your daily lives, if you walk around and you see a pattern, whether it's a picture of the Enterprise in the clouds or a Delta symbol or something that references Star Trek in some way, take a photo of it, post it online with the hashtag Think Trek. Go on there now. You'll see, hundreds of thousands of people have done it. There's great imagery on there. Very clever, a lot of it. And Make Trek, we have a very talented master brick builder called Samuel Hatmaker, who was on Lego Masters. He's made some amazing mosaics of Star Trek. Again, you can go to Make Trek or check out Make Trek online and you could see that. What else? I keep forgetting. Oh, of course, quoting Gene Roddenberry. We pulled 100 quotes from my father that were, I think, poignant and relevant. And we've had a celebrity each day dating 100 days back from his birthday on August 19th. And they've all sort of shared these quotes. And we've done a podcast with two great hosts who have a great juxtaposition, who go through these quotes and they say, what do they mean? What did they mean then? Are they relevant today? And then they bring in a guest who kind of gives it a third perspective. And it's been so great of course, I love my father, but I do think he has always had a lot to say. And these quotes still have a lot to say. And so it's been a real pleasure to be a part of that and listen to those shows and hear the different perspectives and points of view on them. And so I'm incredibly proud of those things. And then on the production side, we're involved in the latest Star Trek TV shows, and we're really proud of the teams that CBS and Paramount have put together to make these happen. The people who are working on them truly love Star Trek. They're not in it for the payday. They're in it because Star Trek has been a lasting legacy that has inspired people, and they want to continue that.
Yeah. If you had a chance to speak to your dad today about his legacy, about his impact as a son, now that you've had a chance to really become intimately involved, what would you say to your dad today?
You know, this is not going to be what you're thinking. My father did something, you know, he was really a forward thinker. And I mean, you could put any sort of word in front of it, a revolutionary thinker. He was not living in today. He was living in 100 years from now.
Yeah.
The things that he thought of. So take 50 or 100 years ago, take fashion, take religion, take government, take anything you want. And think back then, what seemed absurd that today is now every day. Now jump ahead 100 years. What in your life seems offensive, absurd, crass, wrong, terrible? Well, I'll tell you what, I bet you 100 years from now, that will on some level be commonplace. He always lived there. So he would usually sit in a room, possibly with his peers, and they'd be talking about love, sex, marriage, drugs, religion, you know, these sorts of things. And not just for shock value, but he would say something like, you know, what's wrong with legalizing all drugs? You know, what's wrong with anarchy? What's wrong? He would say these things just to get people to think.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't necessarily want the world to fall into anarchy. He didn't necessarily want drugs to become completely legal 100%. But it was something worth having that discussion. So we like to challenge people with that. And we do live in a society today where you got to be very careful what you say, because God forbid you might be canceled. I want us to get back to a time where we can respectfully have these conversations and not offend anyone. I understand that people can take offense, but there is a way, or there should be a way, for people to feel free to have intelligent, well thought out, non-insulting, but critical discussions about these things. Because once again, from these discussions, we grow and learn.
Absolutely. Well, we are.
And I'd like to ask my father, what do you want to talk about today? Because I love that mindset.
Absolutely. Well, I think we do appreciate conversation, but we're not always open to dialogue.
Yeah.
And you have kind of hit on that
and opposing points of view.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the heart of what true dialogue is listening and engaging in that back and forth and being open to thought. Rod, thanks for your time right here talking about your father, Gene, and talking about Star Trek and what it's meant to you and the lasting impact it continues to have. Any final thoughts or comments you want to make sure you share as we celebrate 100 years of Gene Roddenberry?
No, I just I hope everyone listening has some sort of appreciation for not just Star Trek, but the messaging, the ideas. I hope it means something. I hope you can carry it with you, and I hope I don't know. I just hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful life, and we all leave the world better than the way we found it.
That's right. We should live long and prosper, all of us.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Thank
open
you.
dialogue. I'm Noel T. Manning II. Thanks to Rod Roddenberry for his time right here as we talk Star Trek.
Thank you, Noel.
Thanks. So great talking to you.
Take
Really
care.
appreciate it,
My
man.
pleasure.